So we're just letting everybody get settled real quick. And I am trying to get one more person on for our speakers. So what I'm going to do is start the introduction of what we're going to be talking about today and who is going to be talking about it while I help our last speaker come into play. And Itzik and then Lalit, I will let you to introduce yourselves. Today we are going to be talking about how AI agents impact non-human identities and the attack surface. So it's going to be really actionable. We're not going to talk about hypotheticals here, and we have great speakers joining us. Itzik, why don't you kick us off by introducing yourself, and then we will follow with Lalit.
I'm Itzik Alvas. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Security. Ento is a non-human identity lifecycle management company. We're helping organizations to securely use, automate, and manage the lifecycle of non-human identities. I've been personally in the cybersecurity for almost 20 years now. Started at the Israeli Defense Force at one of the intelligence units over there. I was doing offensive cyber back then. So I spent like 6 years at the intelligence unit and then moved to the public market and was doing defensive cyber on the public market. So prior to Ento Security, I was responsible for the internal security of one of Microsoft's clouds. The Defender Cloud under Microsoft. I managed the entire security over there. Prior to that, I was a Chief Information Security Officer at an healthcare services company. And unfortunately, I was breached multiple times in the past by non-human identities. And the last time at Microsoft, we had an event over there. They stole code. It was a major, huge attack on Microsoft resources. And I was trying to figure out how can we better secure non-human identities like service accounts and API keys and so forth. One thing led to another, and I started Dento that was the first pioneer in the non-human identity lifecycle market. So pleasure to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. Lalit, would you like to continue?
Yeah, thanks, Itzik. Hi, everyone. My name is Lalit Choda. I'm the founder and CEO of the Non-Human Identity Management Group. 30 years in the industry, mainly in the financial sector, primarily investment banking. For 25 years, I've been running large global regulatory programs in the sort of human, PAM, and NHI space. More recently, I ran one of the largest cyber NHI programs at a large investment bank where we dealt with over 100,000 NHIs. Last year, I founded the Non-Human Identity Management Group. My passion for this topic, I decided to create a community, educate and evangelize about the topic. So I produce a lot of research, white papers, and formed nhimg.org, which has sort of the largest kind of knowledge center to educate the industry on NHIs. And I guess I'm now known in the industry as a...
Amazing. And Josh, so happy to see you. Perfect timing. And we were just taking a second to introduce the speakers, and then we will go ahead and get started.
So sorry about being late. Just had some technical issues connecting to Zoom. So thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce Josh because he and I have spoken a little bit, and he comes to us with dozens of years of experience. He has spent most of his recent stretch at SolarWinds in Austin, Texas, and he brings this incredible perspective of a practitioner who works really closely, really hand in hand with the security leaders and CISO at his company to understand and kind of bridge that gap between what the security strategy is on to the daily execution through his team. So understanding kind of what the goal is for everybody and what needs to happen in order to achieve that. Josh, I hope I did you justice, but feel free to add anything if I left anything out.
No, I think that was done really well. I do have a lot of experience across many different security realms, and I've worked in most security roles. So I do like to feel like I come with a bit of experience across everything.
Amazing. I love it. Okay, I just want to, before we dive into the slides, one more housekeeping thing. If you have questions, which I totally encourage, I'll be moderating them. Please enter them through the Q&A. That will just help keep them the most organized versus using the chat. So if you have any issues there, I know that I have some internal people on backup to let me know, and I can figure those out. But let's go ahead and get started. So agentic AI, it's everywhere. And I'll take a second. I'm moderating. My name is Kelsey Purcell. I am with Intro Security, but I am not a technical person. So I'm just going to set the stage and then let the experts take it from there. So agentic AI, it's everywhere. Even all of these headlines that we see. What are AI agents? How are they going to impact us? How do they work? Who is doing what with AI? It seems like you can't get away from the headlines. But what exactly is it? So I'm referring to this Gartner definition. The AI agents are autonomous, semi-autonomous software entities that use AI techniques to perceive, make decisions, take action, and achieve goals in their digital and physical environments. Capable of planning, breaking down large goals into smaller, manageable tasks, and optimizing processes based on past experience or user behavior. Those tasks are then executed and tracked through tool integration, which also extends to the agent's ability to manipulate and control its environment. So now you know that I'm a really good reader and I can understand things to a certain degree, but I am going to pass it off to Itzik, who is going to bring in the level of education that you all expect and love.
Yeah, so that's a diagram of how AI agents operate. It's pretty straightforward, as you can probably see over here. So at the end of the day, AI agents are applications. Yes, they have reasoning. Yes, they have other stuff that are making it much easier for us to communicate with or for them to give us the right output. But at the end of the day, they are applications and they are working as any application should work. So as you can see, over here, you will have your model, which is an LLM that can do some reasoning, and he's calling some functions, and that functions are using resources. That resources can be other devices, can be databases, can be other stuff in order to get more data, and to help that function work and come to the right conclusion. But in the end of the day, when looking at how AI agents truly operate, it's pretty clear they are an application with more functionality. I'm not sure if Josh or Lalit, you have any different perspective about it, but I think it's pretty clear to me, at least.
Same. I started this journey, and I told Kelsey when we talked last, I really started my AI defense journey with like, oh, we need something special. We need something new. We need something. And in reality, it's not. We have the tools and the capability today available because these are just applications, like you said. It may take some people to reprioritize their security stack to get that capability, but it's all out there and available.
Yeah. Okay. Lalit, any other perspective on that?
I guess kind of more concerned about where things are going to go with agentic AI. I was reading a report earlier this week that, on average, each person may end up having 2 to 3 AI agents that they use. So the proliferation of, agents is going to increase massively, and therefore the impact and growth of NHIs. So that's quite a scary thought, right? That we could have in a number of years, billions of these AI agents just taking over the world. Very interesting how we put controls and guardrails over these processes, which I'm sure we'll talk about more through the session.
Okay.
Itzik, I'm going to have you go from the guardrail comment to talk about what the initial security impact is on from using AI agents and the adoption of them.
Right. I think if I'll take a step back over here, being in charge of multiple security groups in my path, and maybe Josh can share his thoughts afterwards. But just taking a step back, I think it's information security role within the organization is to never stop the business. By the way, I think in most cases, it's not even possible to stop the business. The business would like to move forward and then adopt new technologies and create more use cases within current technologies and so forth. And I think we're seeing it maybe to the extreme now with AI, where everybody is testing out different scenarios and different stuff. And of course, the organization wants to control it and keep it safe. But at the same time, we would like to make sure we're placing the right controls around everything we're using. We don't want to exchange maybe velocity with security or to exchange new features with security. And security always been like an afterthought. The business, it's quite common where the business is adopting new technology and then security is trying to put some controls and guardrails around them. And we're kind of seeing the same with AI right now. I think the main problems with AI agents, which are again, basically programs that are able to read data or manipulate data or change stuff on your behalf. I think the main issues are as listed over here. You wouldn't want the AI agent to read any sensitive data that are not protected or that he shouldn't read. So maybe you don't want him to access credit cards data or SSN or maybe health data and so forth. I call it like the prompt problem. You don't want your employees within the company to send private data to that AI because you're not sure if he will output the data to someone that is not authorized. So that's probably the first control we would like to have while enabling the business to move forward. The second risk is those AI agents can be like DevOps engineers, act like DevOps engineers or production engineers and so forth, and they can make changes to your production environment, which is always a risk. And I'm not sure we're quite ready with the right controls to feel comfortable in having, automations such as an AI agents. Kelsey, can you go one slide back? Such as the AI agents to make production changes. Of course, execute any privileges, workflows. That's always a risk because that's basically lateral movement by the AI. And also, you don't want him to affect any downstream either teams or automations that he shouldn't. So I think those are the main problems that I'm seeing. But Josh, as a practitioner, I would love to hear your thought about that.
Yeah, I think you hit on some really important things. I'm kind of jotting down some notes so I can remember, keep up, because I know this is a dense topic. So in my conversations kind of amongst our team and the research I've done, a couple things kind of keep coming up. Now, while we did say, yeah, these are just applications, they are more like little intelligences in the application. So the problem becomes the velocity and the kind of formatting of the input. Previously, application security, we really leaned on input sanitization and kind of scrubbing data to make sure it wasn't malicious. Well, with AI and agentic AI being so local to your machine, those prompts can be so diverse and they can be so wide. You can really put a lot of different data into these models and get back results. Part of that is that's part of the issue is previously, looking for alert, parenthesis, some quotes to look for cross-site script injection. Cool. It's very limited range of the data that can be put in. But with AI models and agentic AI, it's just that reliance goes away. So that was one thing I really thought. And the next is around that visibility. As I've looked at many AI defense tools, things like generative AI firewalls in particular, you're really starting to see two flavors. You're starting to see the agent base. Well, now we have agents watching agents. You have this kind of inspector agent looking at all of the AI traffic going out. And then in other models, you have a SWG or a central web gateway or secure web gateway where all your traffic is getting routed to that. I think you're going to see that visibility is going to force people's hands on how they manage their security stack and how they gain that visibility. Really, if you're not unpacking every SSL packet at your defense perimeter, or if you're more zero trust, maybe you're doing it in a central web gateway or a secure web gateway. But if you don't have that, you're really going to lose that visibility. And then, of course, I think one note I have here is the NHI sprawl. And I think this goes to what Lalit was kind of pointing out, is I think my opinion is we will see a massive increase in service accounts or non-human identities to be more modern. We're going to see this sprawl. because as we adopt more agents, each of these agents, and I was telling Kelsey this, it's a non-human identity for a non-human intelligence. If we have these non-human intelligence all scattered across our systems, possibly millions across a user base, each of those are going to need their own identity.
So that's a great segue into what we're going to discuss next. Lalit, I think you're going to have some commentary here, but it's probably a good time for us to hone in and remind everybody what non-human identities look like and how we can create this parallel visual between the non-human identities that we're working to secure and this innovation to adopt agentic AI.
Yeah,
So
sure. So clearly non-human identities, or they're also known as workload machine identities, I guess old terms would be service accounts, APIs, keys, tokens. And these are credentials that are used to manage machines, applications, processes, and the sort of interaction, authentication between them in an automated way without any human intervention. Look, non-human identities, the risks around them have been around since computers ever existed. But look, generally, they were the forgotten problem child. The focus was on human access, PAM, protecting your perimeters. Generally, NHIs are typically unmanaged with very weak controls, right? Most of them are quite static in nature. They've been created maybe many, many years ago. And the lifecycle processes around them, generally fairly weak. So they are becoming, the number one attack vector to compromise systems because they're easy to discover due to the point Josh made around secret sprawl. 24 million secrets in public GitHub repos were found last year. And we're seeing breach after breach around NHIs. We just published a 52 breach report last week, just showing how common it is now for a threat actor to discover and compromise NHIs. To the numbers, they typically outnumber human identities by 25 to 50 to 1, and probably 100 to 1 when we start dealing with agentic AI. And there's many issues with these accounts, right? They're not secure, hard-coded passwords don't get cycled. Many of these accounts are stale, not been used for many years. So you've got a broad surface area of risk around them. Humans use these accounts. So we've got many kind of exposures today around NHIs that organizations are still struggling to grapple with. And now, as we're going to start to grow the agentic AI systems, if people start using the same techniques, the kind of poor controls around them as they are today with many other systems using NHIs, these agentic AI systems are going to have high levels of privilege, and they're going to become obvious attack paths for both external and internal threat actors. Look, and we're already seeing breaches around LLM models where API keys and tokens are discovered, and these models have been compromised for dark role playing and other activities. So look, we really have to think about the security controls around agentic AI and the guardrails, and make sure we do things a little bit differently with kind of agentic AI from how we've managed NHIs historically in the past.
Lalit, I think that really speaks to kind of what I was getting at was this is a tale as old as service accounts, right? Like this problem's been around way longer than agentic AI. What agentic AI and LLMs bring to it in general is a not no longer a need, but a demand for velocity on security teams. Right now, we're keeping up with non-human intelligence. We're keeping up with these AI systems. We need to be as dynamic as they are, and it's going to force a lot of people's hands.
Josh, I love that. And I moved to this slide because I felt like Lalit really covered some of these core risks. And there's an awesome question that I want to field. And I know Lalit mentioned the ratio and how we're probably going to see that increase with the number of non-human identities to human identities as the adoption of agentic AI, continues. We're seeing 92 for every one every one human identity, 92 non-human identities already. And so I see that skyrocketing surely into the hundreds. Josh, there was an amazing question, and I think that your commentary will lead into that really well. And it is, what is your opinion on AI agents suggesting non-secure approaches such as hard coding NHIs in code or not leveraging workload identities to avoid long-lived tokens.
I really hope that's one of my guys, because a lot of my team as we approach this heavily AI motivated, AI driven decision making, we as the human intelligence need to be ever vigilant in monitoring what these applications are recommending. The OWASP top 10 doesn't go away just because this AI said, oh, you should do this. The attack path doesn't go away because it recommends it. And not speaking specifically, but as Lalit's pointed out, we have this real big problem as humans putting hard-coded credentials into code. Well, where do we think the AI learned it? It learned it from us. It learned it from us doing it. So the longer we lean on these AI models being trained off of public data sets that have a lot of errors in them, have a lot of problems in them, we're going to continue to see AI making suggestions that are biased or might be a hallucination. I think it's the overextension of trust for these systems that's going to become a major kind of social topic. So don't do it. In short, don't listen. In short, don't listen to it. Yeah.
Very good advice. And I think Lalit or Itzik and Lalit probably have some commentary here. And I'm going to keep this slide up because we're talking about these core issues that we've identified with the NHI security challenge that we know people are experiencing. And one of them is the unencrypted credentials, the credentials that are hard-coded. Malicious actors are able to find, and then we talk about the speed and the learning and the autonomy of AI agents. I can only imagine. So I would love to hear Itzik and Lalit if you have anything to add to Josh's response.
Yeah, of course. First of all, I completely agree. The AI definitely learned it from our own bad behavior. Secrets are being exposed everywhere by developers, DevOps, SREs, and everybody that needs to either create them, use them, permission them, and so forth. Unfortunately, they are sending them over Slack and other committing them into code and CI/CD pipelines. So at the end of the day, the AI learns and do the same. Again, I think that the problem is twofold. One of them is the prompt problem that I said earlier. The AI can either suggest to expose private data, in our case, credentials, secrets, and non-human identity that grants permission over our most sensitive environments, which is a huge problem. And the second problem is that AI needs to operate within our environment, right? That agentic AI needs to do stuff, it needs to read data, it needs to write data and so forth. So it has its own set of non-human identities, which you need to figure out how can you monitor and understand how it's operating, what it's doing, is everything allowed, is everything is doing is something according to your own standards. The unknown ownership, that's probably the biggest problem because now you have AIs that are creating those non-human identities. They are permissioning them, they are using them, they are scattering them around, and it's going to be a huge issue to understand how to remove them without causing any downtime. And that's going to be definitely the biggest problem. Idle tokens, I haven't seen any agentic AI clean up after himself. And once it stopped using that non-human identity, basically going and deleting him. So yes, definitely there are a lot of security practices that agentic AIs are not following, and with the rapid pace of how it's being moved and used, and how many non-human identities it's creating, it's definitely going to be a severe problem.
It's like you said something that made my hair stand up on my arms because I'd not really thought about it because it's so far out of anything I would ever do. But agentic AI systems creating their own non-human identities.
Yeah.
While I tend to keep account creation, account deletion, always something that security professionals should be aware of, persistence inside your network, and we could go on and on about that. But if I'll tell you right now, if we had an AI come across that, hey, we want this to manage our identities, that would be a hard sell for me. I'm cool with it doing a lot of things, even some maybe network management, firewall management. The creation of identities that'd be a long conversation with whoever requested it.
Yeah, no, I agree, but at the end of the day, I'm seeing a lot of DevOps agentic AI popping up, companies that are doing that. And basically what they are doing, what they are selling is, I'm going to manage your infrastructure, I'm going to manage your Terraform and so forth. What does it mean to manage your Terraform? It means you're going to create non-human identities. And what does that mean? That the agentic AI will create non-human identities, and it can do a bunch of stuff with it. Sometimes it's in hidden form.
I mean, just a couple of other
And
things to add. Sorry, Kelsey. Look, these days you don't need to be a programmer anymore. You just share your prompt of what code you want a model to generate, and we're seeing research, to Itzik's point earlier, that code's being generated on the fly with hard-coded secrets in there. So these bad practices are being followed with the new AI, generation of software. Look, I think the other big concern is over-permissioned NHIs. By nature, they have high privileges. But if you think of an agentic AI process, so the kind of the Uber, it can do pretty much anything and everything within your organization, talk across agents. I think there's a lot of concern around people creating agentic AI processes that are even more overprivileged than what existing NHIs are today. And I think as an industry, we haven't really figured out how we're going to deal with sort of permissioning model and how AI agents kind of interact with each other. So as Itzik says, the world is moving so fast, and we can't keep up, and we need to step back as an industry and think about how we're going to properly secure these agents that are just going to go proliferate more and more. And I think we're going to make things worse before we're going to make things better. And really, we do need to take a security first approach, but I think that's hard to do at just the pace at which AI is moving at the moment, unfortunately.
Lalit, I think you really, I could not agree more that we need to be thinking as a security community really heavily on how we manage these apps. While we haven't had this issue with an agentic system, we have with other AI kind of marketing tools where I'll sit down with my business applications team and we're like, man, this is just wildly overprivileged. I think it's going to be, for a little bit, at least for a little while, it's going to be the responsibility of your organization to take the time to look at these permission sets and not blindly accept whatever the kind of guidance doc is. You need to think about what's the business value of this tool? What am I really trying to do with it? And is this permission fall in line with that? If I have a marketing tool that scours the internet and brings me back a bunch of marketing data, does it need the ability to write to my Salesforce instance? Maybe not. That's something you and your organization need to look at. But I completely agree. It's going to be on the side of the practitioner for a while to really maintain that level of scrutiny.
Yeah, I think with over privileged tokens, the main problem that I'm seeing in the market and we're seeing in the market is that you have developers or DevOps and so forth that they are creating those non-human identities when they are in the development stage of their application. And they don't quite know exactly what are the permissions they will need. So they just give it a min for the development period of time. But then moving to production, no one changed it. And now you're left with unneeded permissions in production. It can be admin, it can be write, and so forth. But that's the main use case that we're seeing. Again, people not cleaning up after themselves.
And I keep going back to this, like this is the same problem that we've seen for forever. But when GitHub announced the fine grain access tokens, I think this is really hitting on this topic of overprivilege. I can create a personal access or a private access token or personal access token in GitHub, and that thing has the same rights I do. No matter what it's used for, it's got the same rights I do. Now with the fine grain, they can really specify and limit that privilege. We're going to need to see a lot more of that from the industry.
Okay.
So it's that autonomy, right? That not cleaning up after yourself, the over-permissioned NHIs, and the autonomy that makes agentic AI so interesting and so valuable can also be such a costly impact if not handled properly. So Josh, before we move on, because I do think that we're really identifying this parallel between AI agents and non-human identities. There was a question that I want answered before we move to the next slide. And it's almost like all of you security people have your own identities, but think so much alike. Because as you all were talking, and actually before this came up, Vanderson came in the Q&A and said that they've been really exploring NHIs pretty deeply lately, and made the point that the identities aren't created exclusively by a human identity anymore. The AI agents are creating some of these identities. So the question is, how can we bring, and if anybody can answer this, I'll be like really impressed. We need to hone in and trademark. How can we bring that real accountability into this when we're not really sure who owns the identities in a traditional sense? And making that lineage connection between the creation of a non-human identity that potentially, increased risk for the organization if an AI agent is responsible for creating it.
So personally, I'm a go back to basics guy. KISS person, if you're from the South, keep it simple, stupid. Put human roadblocks in. After all of the complexities that have come out with development environments, a big topic is pull request approvals. Who is looking at the pull request approval to move this code along? Well, we need to start taking that same kind of gated human approach to these identity creations. Just because the AI has the ability to create the identity, it should still be approved by some process and some human portion of it. We're looking at a lot of zero trust and leaning into more automation around these exact things, where yes, I can give my developers especially the agility to move quickly, but I still have a human gateway and everything, and mostly resolved through automation. In the days of needing a help desk tech to relay an email to a manager to get an approval, those are gone. And you don't need AI to do it. You can do those with fairly automated kind of traditional systems. So I would always say, do not take the human factor out.
I think Josh and me come from the same school. Keep it simple, stupid. Look, everybody talks about human ownership, but look, fundamentally, everything ties back to some business process, some business application. So I think there always has to be ownership, accountability to an application, to a business process, which then infers human ownership. So whatever happens with Agentic AI, they're all still going to be linked to some group, some team. So there'll always be a logical owner, I think, for most of the processes that get built with Agentic AI as well, even though they're maybe now much more interconnected and, kind of talk to each other in a more of an uncontrolled way than we may have envisaged previously.
That's great commentary, and I love the connection there. We're gonna keep moving along, but I think that Josh and Lalit both just explained the concept of guardrails, not gates, right? It's this ability to still move quickly, to still foster and encourage innovation of the business and the teams without creating this chaos or creating this environment that the security guardrails aren't in place, and then you could have catastrophe very quickly. So this is just a quote that I pulled in. It's a third-party independent, well-respected org that we all know and trust, but they really did make the connection clear and that parallel between AI agents and NHIs clear. So I wanted everybody to have this as an overview in the slides, but I think that it sums up everything that we've spoken about. So I'm going to continue because we still have great questions to come, but these will be available so you all can read at your own pace when I share the slides afterwards. And Josh, this came from our conversation, and I think that it's been discussed already, but showing this visual of how the increased AI agent use and complexity of those scenarios increase non-human identities, and that if we're in an uncontrolled or unchecked environment, those risks and those core risk factors that we discussed previously can go from normal to catastrophic in minutes. And that leads into, if nobody has any comments, I'm going to lead into this hot take from Josh. So he's going to go over the next few slides of what he's seeing now, real time, day to day.
Yeah, so I may sound like a broken record on this call, but it's really because it's my deep belief that we have to meet the velocity of these agents. Previously, you had to wait on synchronous comms for a malicious actor to really get a remote access tool, and then once they get that remote access tool, they can kind of run command line level issue command line level commands to the system, and we had to wait for this dance, you could say. But with AI agents, if I compromise your agent and you have it overprivileged, you're not competing with me having to slowly type on a keyboard, or you're not having to wait for me to come up with a attack script that's custom to your environment. An AI agent would be able to assess those environments and provide that information very quickly, and it could just look like diagnostic information. Often a ping sweep or an nmap scan of an environment could look just like maintenance. Those are huge reconnaissance tools for malicious actors. The ability to feed information from the Agentic AI directly into the OS, even if you have a model that reaches out to some larger language model in the sky, if it's issuing commands locally, if I don't have my logging and my monitoring set up to monitor those, you're just not even going to see what it does. So we've leveraged Intro here very heavily on our development side, and it gives my team the ability to see these things as they're happening. Not necessarily the machine level processing, but the identities that are used to do that processing, the identities that are used to make lateral commands to another machine. So I just feel like that visibility and that assessment of your non-human identities, and especially how it relates to your agentic AI systems, you need to prioritize that in your organization before you take this on. Without visibility, we're all just kind of hopes and dreams doing security, and that never works.
And we're talking about all of these like huge, and it can seem like really difficult to know how to start and what to do when you have so many requests as a security team. You have so many things that you're juggling, and we know that there's always limited resources, whether it's people on the team or budget or whatever it is. But with using Intro and how you were able to understand the non-human identities and how you're approaching with this I'll say encouragement, not pressure, to adopt agentic AI, what's your suggestion to people who are sitting in similar seats to you going, okay, I hear you. I know the risks. I'm aware of all of this because, like we said, it's not this totally new concept, but how do you recommend they start and take that first step to empowering themselves and being able to figure out what their path forward and the solution is for them?
I would say a great place to start is with your legal team. It's always the best place to start is with your legal team. Understand the regulatory and legal requirements around your industry. And I'd say start there and really start to build a business funnel that allows you to see what your user base is wanting. Whether it's a part of your TPRM process, which is third-party risk management, or it's a part of a procurement process, whatever that looks like for you and your organization. Start there. Then once you get a handle, what I would recommend is once you get a handle on the intake, start to look for the shadow operations. Leverage tooling that allows you to get an assessment of your or an inventory of your network and scope that inventory down to the LLMs and kind of agentic AI systems. Once you have a very reliable inventory, it's CIS all day, right? Inventory, assess, prioritize, remediate. It's a very common cycle that you'll see within SecOps and within business in general. Get an idea of what's out there. It's going to be massive. So start to understand your business criticality and the security criticality that your organization has the appetite for. If you're a highly stringent environment, you may be looking at every app. If you're looking at an environment, if you're in a bit more risk adverse or less risk adverse environment, you may just be looking at kind of high level LLMs or high big name LLMs that you're going to just say, hey, we want to review these and these will be okay. And then I think you'll also see a group, kind of what I think I would love to push, but understand we all are here as a business. What I'd love to push is application blacklisting. I think that's where we will see a lot of organizations go saying, these 5 models are our models and everything else gets blacklisted. That'll become very difficult, and that I think we will see that in highly security demanding environments. Yeah, I think that's where I would say inventory, assess, prioritize.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they balance the innovation with the security and depending on the organization and what's required of them. I will move on to the next slide, and I think that this is just the bow that ties it all together, that cherry on top of what you have been saying, but we're going to reemphasize it. Josh, if you don't mind, just really bringing it on home.
Sure. So as I was talking to Kelsey earlier this week or last week, all this is going to do is increase our attack surface, and it's going to increase it in not just width but depth. And I know that's kind of weird to say about attack surface, but right now, any new application, agent, AI or otherwise, is going to increase your attack surface. Everything has risk with it. But what I mean by depth with agentic AI systems is the depth of capability within that system, which goes across this entire call that we've had. If I have an AI that has the exact same capabilities as I do as a user, how are we as security professionals supposed to distinguish between that behavior? So what we'll see is not only a much wider attack surface, we will see a much more impactful attack surface with agentic AI.
Okay.
Well, I think just to add to that, I think look, as more and more human functions get taken over by agentic AI processes, we have to have very tight controls, guardrails around what we're developing, back to basics, access control, least privilege. I think many people are familiar with the risks around agentic AI and LLM in terms of, if you've got access through your NHI, you can hijack control systems, you can do data poisoning, you can cause models to create inputs that evade the correct paths. It's not the old days where you had a simple API and your process could only do one thing. You give it an input, you get an output. Now, it's so flexible. The data you can give in as prompt, the data that comes out can vary significantly. So I think, then people can, from the data, infer data as well. So just all the controls and guardrails around now, agentic AI have to be much, much tighter than I think anything we've done previously. I think we need to ensure, we look at things like zero standing privileges, zero trust. To Josh's point, we need to monitor these agentic AI processes even more for doing, anomalous kind of activities. So there's a lot more, I think, that we need to think about. And I think back to basics, policies, processes, you need to be very clear as an organization. What are the controls you're going to put around, agentic AI? They're going to be your crown jewels. So they need to have the tightest controls around them.
Lalit,
Yes.
I want to touch on something as we get into these guardrails because it's perfectly aligned with it. You said zero trust. And I think that is exactly where we need to go with this, is we need to treat these as any other identity and monitor the trust we extend to them, the privilege we extend to them, and treat them as if they are already compromised.
So when we talk about the guardrails, not the gates, the reason that we put so much detail into this and are having such a involved discussion is because we want to marry the information that we're giving you and not kind of just be Chicken Little, if I'm dating myself, where, running around and saying, this is a big problem, this is huge, but what do we do with that? What does guardrails, not gates actually mean? And to you all's point, we can't stop business. Innovation needs to continue because we're all trying to reach goals. And we also have to understand that when we go back to basics, what the environment looks like now versus what it could look like if we do adopt agentic AI and we do have, the issues that we didn't flag beforehand with over-permissioned NHIs, and then those grow at such an unprecedented rate. How do we get a handle on that? And how do we help everybody who is a security leader and helping manage this and solve this problem? How do we help guide them to create these guardrails and not just put up gates immediately, find that balance between business and security?
I'm kind of famous around our office for saying, I'm not going to tell you no, I'm going to tell you not like that.
Exactly.
I try to always be a solutions-driven security architect or engineer or whatever your role is. I'm here to be useful to the company. Not just, yes, security, yes, I need to keep everything secure, but yes, I also need to understand we're here for a reason. So often I'll say, hey, sure, you want to automate some process within the build pipeline, but you can't give it full permissions. It still needs a human gateway. It still needs this. So I think taking that mentality will really serve a lot of security professionals well. We're known as the office of no. I want us to be known as the office of not like that.
I completely agree. And I think it's, with any new technology, definitely with AI, that is doing stuff that sometimes we're not aware of exactly what they're doing. I think that it's even easier to go to the no and not like that. But I do think that we listed, or Kelsey listed some of the stuff over here that will give us the ability to do not like this, or basically to enable the business to work as fast as they would like, while having the proper security oversight to make sure they are doing that with the right security measures.
There's a few more minutes left, and we're getting some good questions. And I think it's related to the conversations that we're having. So one of them, Itzik, I'm gonna go with you because it's specifically about how somebody is currently using Wiz integration. Shameless plug, we are partnered with Wiz as of last week, and we're taking their DSPM solution with our NHI capabilities, but they want to understand how that can help with the discovery of maybe what data the NHI has access to, what data or potential guardrails you want to put around AI agents if they're creating NHIs. Is it personal sensitive data? How does that integration overlap, and how do you see it impacting this conversation, if at all, right now? Maybe it's
That's a great question. So yes, we have a great partnership with Wiz, and I can see the question, and some of it is like Wiz are also able to scan for some secrets. So you said that you saw an overlap with that, which is true. They are able to scan for some secrets, but at the end of the day, in order to scan secrets, you will need some sort of a regex pattern, but that won't be sufficient because yes, you can find secrets, but then you will have so many other questions, exactly like AI. Okay, so that secret, which is a credential of a non-human identity, how it's being used, is it enabled or already expired, what it gives access to, production or not production, and so forth. And that's where Entro comes in. So we're able to find over 1,200 types of non-human identities, where Wiz is able to find like 20. So even if we're looking at the same place, we're finding much more than them. That's what we give Wiz. We're using Wiz because once we're finding a non-human identity belongs to an agentic AI or belongs to an application, we're creating a map of which application, which workload, agentic AI or other is using the non-human identity and what it's accessing. It can be database, storage account, or whatever. And then we're taking that map that Ento creates and enriching it with Wiz findings. So let's say the workload have vulnerabilities, we can enrich it with Wiz. Let's say that the workload is using a non-human identity to access a database, and that database have personal information like SSN. That's enrichment we're doing with Wiz and so forth. So it's a great, better together partnership for both sides.
And shameless plug for intro. That enrichment is so important. I'm not going to name names, but I'm doing a review of a security tool we have, and one of the issues was it doesn't provide enough enrichment to make remediation easy. If you're in a shop of 60 and you are, a restaurant, sure, that's not as important to you. You have the time to take that remediation steps. But when you're a larger organization, having that enrichment, having all that telemetry to tell me attribution of ownership, the systems it's accessing, that makes the remediation and triage so much more tackleable when you have these large numbers.
We couldn't agree more.
We are winding down, and so I wanted to make sure that everybody knew how to get in contact with us towards the end. We do have one more question, so if somebody can answer this in about 90 seconds, I'm gonna read it off. But to everybody will get these slides and be able to understand knowledge is power. So those, the enrichment factors, the knowledge of your environment, see this as a stepping stone to be more powerful in what you decide to do next. So one quick question. Azure launched SRE agents. How do we adapt at an equal pace to intelligently guardrail production workloads co-spaced with AI agents, or not getting overshadowed by those agents? Josh, do you have feedback there?
It goes back to what we've talked about here is make sure you have that human gateway. Yes, velocity is important, and you will gain more velocity. It will happen no matter what. Whenever you adopt these AI systems, you're going to get more velocity. Don't let, how do I put this? I think I've heard someone say the enemy of good is better, something along that line. Sure, you could be moving at the speed of light, but what does it matter if you're going to get compromised? Take the 15 seconds, take the 2 minutes, add the automation, get a human factor in there, get someone to get eyes on it. And then at least at the end of the day, you know who to go bug. Because I can't go bug an AI system, but I can go bug a senior manager.
Yes,
Right. I would suggest that another solution, and that's what we're doing over here at Entro, is enriching the non-human identities, understanding the non-human identities that are being used by that agentic AI. And if you know who's the owners of the credentials that that the agentic AI is using via its non-human identities, then you have the proper visibility to attach everything to the right owner. But yeah, that's what I would suggest.
Okay, so
So I was just going to say, finally, look, I think there's a lot of hype around agentic AI, and look, I think some of it's valid. As I talk to a lot of customers, most people are focused on building very simple agentic AI processes at the moment, right, to replace kind of standard human kind of functions, tasks. So I think kind of the world where, we've got agents talking to each other, they're doing everything within an organization. I still think it's a few years away, even though it's moving very fast. So I think back to the basics, focus on your controls, the best practices around managing NHIs, and then least privilege, move away from static credentials, then your agentic AI processes will be generally fairly secure if you build on those kind of core foundational principles. They don't really change as we move to agentic AI. I think just things get more complex from a modeling standpoint, but stick to the basics.
I'm with you, Lalit.
I love this. Obviously, we could talk about this all day. There's one more question, and I know if people have to drop, they have to drop, but I'm going to let Itzik hone in on this one because we talked about Entro adding this value and seeing how it's impacted organizations on the day-to-day. But what is the most compelling benefit of Entro over the many other NHI solutions that we've heard and talked about?
Yeah, there are many where at least technology-wise, where our platform is the strongest is two places. First of all, we're able to find, and hopefully Josh as a customer can attest to it, we're able to find usually like 50, 70% more non-human identities and secrets than the competition. That's we have an amazing algorithm, Entro is out of entropy. Those non-human identities usually are long randomized strings, highly randomized strings with high entropy, and that's why we call them Entro. And we can find many more than the competition. And the other one is the abnormal behaviors. So for every non-human identities, we're enriching it, we're creating the map, but we're also tracking the activities of each and every one of them. And we're creating a baseline of activities, and any deviation from that baseline that we're seeing, like a non-human identity that is I don't know, I'll give you an example. Maybe someone is using your non-human identity out of North Korea, but you're not doing business from North Korea. That's going to be an abnormal behavior. That's going to be something we're going to flag. We're going to prevent and so forth. So abnormal behavior is another a huge capability where we're strongly leading.
Amazing. And I think that that really ties into some of the conversations that we had around not putting gates, but putting guardrails, understanding what's happening in your environment and empowering the team to have human intervention or, have the automatic processes based on human decisions made in what needs to be done in order to keep things secure. So we've gone 3 minutes past. Talk about this forever. Hopefully we do this again soon. And I want to thank everyone for joining and thank you to the speakers. This was a really good discussion. I hope that you all enjoyed it as much as we did, but thank you all so much. Any last comments? Speak now. And if not, we'll go have a great rest of your week. And I will email everybody recording slides, all of the good stuff. And please keep in contact with our speakers. Follow the Entro Security page. We include a bunch of industry information. And I know that Itzik, Josh, Lily, NHI Management Group, they all post news that we need to know about as well. So thank you all. I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I appreciate it. Bye.